So this is one of the 55-gallon drum hay feeders. It's already got the mesh bag in it, and it latches up on the top of this eye loop. You just cinch the top closed and click it on there, tie your slip knot there, and that just keeps the taller horses from feeding out of the top and scattering all their hay all over the place. So once they learn to get down here and feed out of that, that will just give them a mouthful and make things a little less messy in the stall. For this hay net, there's a carabiner on the bottom, and there's a rope loop tied in the bottom of the barrel. And so we can click the middle of the bag to the bottom of the barrel, and that just helps keep the net on the bottom from pulling out, and that lets the horse move it around to get all the hay out right down to the bottom. It's easy to unclip, so if you have to clean out under there, you just sweep it out with your glove. Not all of the horses in the barn are really messy or picky eaters. Some of the horses, we just put the large mesh bag in, and what they drop, they clean up most of the time. But it does keep them facing the same direction, so cleaning up the stall tends to be a little easier when they're making a mess on the other end. So in this case, the mesh bag isn't closed on the top, and these are about an 8x8 mesh, and there's no carabiner on the bottom to hold it in. It doesn't actually get right to the bottom of this barrel because it's not a homemade bag, so it wasn't made to measure for these barrels, but it's one net we had around, so we thought we'd try it, and we found the horse that it works the best for, so this one will stay like this. So we'll go check out how the barrel gets all measured out and installed. So the tools we're going to use for this hay feeder is a cordless sawzall, a drill with a 3/8 bit, a jigsaw, 2 screwdrivers to get the caps out of the barrel, 2 carabiners to use to tie down the top and bottom of the hay bag, also some rope to close up the top and bottom of the hay bag, a Sharpie to trace the pattern, and the cheapest ratcheting tie down strap you can find. You might have some old ones, but you want it to be a ratcheting one, not just the pull tight style, because you're going to want this to be nice and tight so the horses don't pull on it. Okay, let's get started. So your first step in making this feeder is to find a 55-gallon polyethylene drum. These were for car wash soap, so I know it's water soluble. I can wash it all out and make it safe. If you can find food grade barrels, even better, because you don't have to worry about how clean you get them. But once you get these drums, you got to get the caps out. If they didn't remove the caps before you got them, you just cross 2 screwdrivers. You can get these little plugs out. Now there's a wrench you can buy on Amazon for these, but if you're only making a couple of these, the screwdrivers will work just fine. So I'll set that aside. Your next step is going to be to lay out your pattern for what you want the feeding area of the drum to be. I've already made a few of these, so I've got a pattern made up, and I can make that available, but let me just get this marked out, and I'm just going to trace the one I have. And this is just so that I can jigsaw around. You want to make sure your barrel's dry, because the Sharpie does not like the plastic to be wet. Alright, so got that all the way around. Okay, so now what I want to do is drill a hole just to start my jigsaw with. I'm just going to drill one here on the bottom. Depending on the size of your jigsaw blade, you might need 2 holes. So now I'm going to cut out the pattern, and going to jigsaw it. You don't need a cordless jigsaw. You can use one with a cord if you have it. It's really easy to cut this stuff. That. So once we get the front cut out of our barrel, we need to cut the top out so that we have something to load the hay into. So first thing I'm going to do is drill a couple holes side by side, just connect them. So there's 3 in a row. That's going to let me get my sawzall in there. So I'm going to sawzall the top of this barrel out. I'm just going to keep the angle towards the inside. It makes it easier to fall out. You don't want to cut into the edge too much because it's thicker plastic. That's it. Once you get the top of the barrel cut out and you've got the feed hole cut out, you've got to drill some holes, and you can just line up the top that you cut out with the bottom. What you want to do is center it on the middle of the feed hole, and there. You're going to drill 2 holes right in the middle, and you're going to go through the bottom of the barrel and the bottom of this top lid. They're going to be about an inch and a quarter apart. I'm also going to do the same thing at the back, about 2 inches in from the edge. And this is going to let me put rope loops through this old lid and rope loops through here, and that's going to let me carabiner the lid to the bottom of the bag, or tie the lid to the bottom of the bag, and use a rope loop to use a carabiner to hold the back of the lid to the bottom of the bucket. It just keeps the horses from flipping it around and spinning the bag in knots. And then I'm going to drill some extra holes for drainage. If this is going outside, you could use a hole saw for this, but because this is just going inside, if there's any chance of water getting in this, I'll be able to drain it out at the bottom. And that's it. Now that we've got the top cut out and the feed hole cut out and the holes in the bottom drilled for drainage, we got to design the size of the mesh bag that's going to go inside of this, and we'll do that inside, and I'll show you how that works. Because I need 17 pairs of paracord to make this hay net, I needed something to organize them while I'm trying to tie the knots as I'm going around. I took a Christmas tree stand and a tripod. The tripod is adjustable height-wise, so as I'm tying knots I can raise this and make it easier to work on. If you don't have this stuff in your garage, just grab the 55-gallon drum that you're making the feeder with, and that will work to hold all these strands out of the way. As you go along, this will shorten up, but these are 10 feet long. Now what I did is I cut them 20 feet long and folded them in half, marked them at 3 inches, and tied them in a knot. And that's my starting row, so this will be the row that I can lace the top rope for the hay net to close it up. so that these ones have loops. They're a little smaller than the actual squares will be, because the squares are going to be 3 by 3. This square is only going to be 1.5 inches by 1.5 inches, but I don't need a big one to use for the loops at the top. So I'm going to go ahead and cut another 14 of these pairs, and then we'll get this set up and I'll show you what that looks like. Once I get all the pieces cut to length, I've got a block of wood here that's 3 inches across. I just put the ends over the edge of the board, mark the 3-inch point, and then that's where I'm going to tie the knot for this, for my starter row. And you just want to cinch it up. I mark the line, I just keep the knot right underneath it. The more even you can make these, the more equal the squares will be when you get your net made. So that's what you got to do for each of those to start, and then we're going to tie them all up and I'll show you what's going on after that. Okay, so I've tied a little loop here to attach all the 17 pairs, and I've spread them out around the perimeter of the stand. Now I'm going to mark under the first knot I did at 3 inches. I'm going to mark 3 inches again, and I'm going to do that all the way around, and that's going to give me a knot length where to tie the knot on these adjoining pairs. So what I'm going to do this time is pick 2 paracords that are going to touch each other from the opposite neighboring set here, and then we tie that knot, and that's going to start the diamond pattern on the net. So I won't need this block once I get down over the edge. I can use my hand for the distance because it works out. If it was a different size, if it was a 6 by 6 square or 5 by 5, it wouldn't, but because it's 3 by 3, I found that just between my index and pinky, if I hold that under the knots, I can pinch that, tie the knot around, and it works out for the right spacing. So I'll get this ring, the first ring tied, and I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so the second ring of knots is already tied. The next knot will bring the pair back together, and that'll make the full diamond. And then the next pair after that will do the opposites again, and that will make the next row of diamonds. And it's going to be time lapse from here on. All put together, bottom's tied together, and there's a loop in the top that's going to be able to tie this shut when we get it hung up. It's a little tricky to do with one person, but what I'm going to do is loop this over the top of the barrel. Okay. And then I'm going to take my ratchet strap, and I'm going to thread this through on the, it's going to be 2 full diamonds, so it's going to be on this one right here. Okay, now once I get this snugged up, I'm going to spin this around so that the latch and the hooks are in the back. So 180 from the front. just make sure that your row of 2 diamonds is all even, and then you can spread them out just so that everything's open at the same distance. Just pull up on that so that they're all equal. Pretty good. Okay. So that's ready to get mounted to the wall. I'm just going to cut a little bit of the slack off of the ratchet strap. Good 6 inches should be enough to leave. Now we've already drilled the matching holes to the bottom of the barrel with this old top. It's going to drop in. That just opens the net up on the bottom, and that's going to let us tie that to the barrel. Okay, we got our drawstring here. We'll shorten that up once we get in position. We'll take this into the barn and then we'll attach it. The first thing that I've got to do is I've got to put a loop up here, just an eye loop so that I can attach my cord once I cinch up the top of the hay bag. So I'm just going to drill a hole, easy to reach. It's a lot easier to do this now than after the barrel's in. And I've just got this bolt that I'm going to use to get this started. Kind of as a wrench, I guess. Probably get it started by hand, but then once it goes in, it's going to be snug. Alright, and double check your eye loops. Make sure they're not long enough to go through to the other side. Got 6 1.5 long 5/16 diameter bolts with washers, and they're going to go down the side of the barrel, 3 on each side. The barrel top is going to be at the bottom of my 3rd board here. And I'm just going to double check, make sure all my ratchet straps are tight. I want the bracket on the ratchet strap to end up in the corner here so that it doesn't hit the walls while I'm trying to tighten everything up. So I'm going to get one of these started and then I'll bring the camera in a little closer. Okay, I've got this sitting here just with 1 bolt, and it's still movable. At this point, make sure the top of your mesh bag is inside the barrel, because if it's wrapped around the sides, you won't be able to pull it up once you get the other 5 bolts in place. And just give this a pull. Make sure you got it all where you want it. And just drill the other holes, 3 on each side. got that in place, I've got a couple other things that I need to do. Some of them are optional and some of them you definitely want to do. So first thing I'm going to do is get the length of my tie rope shortened up. I made this a little long just because I wasn't standing right here when I looped up the bag, but I wanted to make sure I had enough. So you want to make sure that you have enough rope to be able to open this up, so when you're going to load the hay feeder, it's easy to do. And that means basically the opening of the drum. Once you get to that point, you can shorten it up. So I'm going to put a loop here. And I always do a little double knot because then I can put my carabiner at the first one, not worry about not slipping later on. Okay, scissors, cut the extra off. And did I bring a lighter? Yes, I did. Melt the ends. Okay, so once I get this where it needs to be, I just go like this, and you don't have to undo this anymore. Once you get the carabiner on, you just do your knot on the top so that the bag stays shut, and that's all you got to do. Okay, so what I'm going to do next is I'm going to put a loop through the bottom two holes of the old barrel top so that I can tie the bag, center of the bag to the barrel top, and that'll just keep everything centered up. I don't want too much of this net sticking out when the horses are done eating and they're empty. So I put 4 holes in the bottom of this, and you'll decide if you need the back two and a back two, the back two in the barrel to make a loop. If your horse spins this around constantly, then you're probably going to want to put the carabiner on the back, and that just keeps them from being able to spin the bottom. Some of the horses can do it anyway, and I put 2 carabiners on the bottom, one in the middle and one on the back. But the first set of holes, I'm just going to push these through. And I'm going to tie a knot around all this center stuff here. So if I can, I'll get the rope right down the middle. Might be able to put it right in this hole. I tied that pretty tight, but this right in the center. And take this carabiner off. Put my rope through that hole, and then I'll make the new loop, hold the carabiner. Alright, yeah, just loop mount this. Okay, so that's the bottom of the bag ready to go. Now all I got to do is put a loop on the bottom of the barrel, and we already drilled the 2 sets of holes, so I'm going to go with the middle one, but you can go with the back one, the middle one, or both, depending on how often your horse gets it spun up. If it gets spun up like that, you might want to use the back one. Alright, so the first thing I do with this, I put a loop in it, and that gives me a place to put the carabiner. It doesn't have to be a long loop, because the longer you make it, the more slack you're going to give the horse to move this around. Alright, so once you get that, put it through the bottom. And just tie the bottom in knots. So now, I can just click the carabiner on this. And, okay, so we've got the carabiners all set up. The loop is open at the top. We're going to load it up and show you how easy that is. Now you can pack quite a bit of hay in this if you want to just shove it all down. Depends on how much horse you got in your pen and how much you need to feed it overnight. These pens are just for the guys overnight, so that's all there is to it. Okay, so you've seen how the hay feeder is made from start to finish. The project is 90% recycled material, and the rest of the material doesn't cost that much. It takes a little bit of time to make the net, but this is going to last you a long time in the barn, so probably a good use of your time and save some money over the long run. If you need some plans, you've seen how I've done this on the video, but if you want the exact same drawings and dimensions that I used, then you can leave a comment or contact me and I can set you up. Thanks for watching.